I put Brandon Graham as number 2. And
wow.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know that feels high. I get it.
Whoa.
I understand. But I just think between the ability to defend the run, which we don't give him any credit for, and the pass, he's a versatile 2-down defensive end who's not just a specialist and has, the longevity thing for me is amazing. I know he missed last year, but he's been around for a very long time. I mean, he's gone through Andy Reid, Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, and now Nick Sirianni. That's remarkable.
Yep.
There you go. All right, let's get to the list. We're going to do top 5. If you're just jumping on, if you're just jumping on the stream or listening, top 5 Eagles offensive and defensive players. We're going to break them down between offense and defense since 2000, not prior to that. We know all the great players before that. We know Barrett would be number 1 if we were doing it before that. We know that. That's a given. So with that said, I'll let you start, Barrett. If you want to take the offensive side since you were an offensive player, work your way up from 5 to 1. All right, you get the first crack at this. Where would you go offensively? Top 5 Eagles since 2000 on the offensive side of the ball.
Of course, you know how to go with Trey and Runyon. That's 4 and 5 or 5 and 4, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
I got to go with those two, the bookends. Next, I'll go T.O. I'll go T.O. Then I'll go Westbrook.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll go Westbrook. And number 1, I hate to do it to myself and I hate to do it to everybody, but I'm going to go McNabb. Is my number 1.
McNabb is number 1. Number 5 is number 1. Number 5 will always love you. So one more time.
He went to D-Gun school.
Yeah. So one more time. You go your Trey and Runyon.
Yep.
5 and 4.
Yep.
3 is
T.O.
2
Westbrook.
B West and D-Mac.
Yes.
Number 5 is number 1. Okay. Interesting list. How about you, Gunner? How would you break it down?
I knew you were going to get to me sooner or later.
You want me to go? Buy you a little time?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, I'll buy you time. This wasn't easy, man. And that's a good thing for the Eagles, I guess, that there were this many, good players. So I went Shady McCoy 5. If you look at, the rushing, receiving, yards per carry.
Yep.
This guy had a remarkable Eagles career. And I know
he's still number 1. He's still number 1 in rushing for the Eagles.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And I know not everybody, he wasn't everybody's cup of tea. And believe me, I had some, dealings with him where he wasn't the best to deal with. But anyway, if I'm keeping it real, that he was that kind of player. So I have Shady as number 5. Number 4, I went Kelsey. Kelsey's probably going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yep. That's tough.
So when all is said and done, he's arguably, I mean, you could say Bednarik because he played center and linebacker, but he's arguably the greatest center that's ever played for the Eagles. He's going to make the Hall of Fame.
The best center that ever played for Eagles.
So I put Kelsey in there. I went Jason Peters, another guy who I think is going to be a Hall of Famer. At number 3. And I know sometimes offensive linemen don't get the love and it's not as sexy and whatever as other positions, but I went Peters, man. I went Peters at number 3.
I should have did the same thing. I'm telling you, I should have did the same thing. But the only reason why I put those two, because they're the reason why I was kicked out of Philly, dog.
That's reason enough. When they cost you money, they make a I like
That's why I was gone. They kicked me out because of those two.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, and really hard to argue. Trey Thomas and John Runyon aren't on one of these lists. I'm not. I hear you, Barrett. All right, so I had Peters at number 3. Number 2, I'll go T.O. It was very short-lived. It was a season and a half.
Yep.
And that's why I debated having him that high or not. But it was an incredible season and a half. Unfortunately, it went blew to bits in a lot of ways. But I have him at number 2. I have McNabb at number 1. And I know people don't necessarily aren't all in love with him. I get the personality rub. I know he never really connected the way he probably should have with Philadelphia fans. But if you look at his numbers and you look at the sustained success minus a Super Bowl, big deal. I get it. That he had that guy had an amazing run at a position that's hard to find, quarterbacks. So I went LaShawn, Kelsey, Peters, Owens, McNabb, guys who didn't make the list, who I really would have liked to have put on the list. Westbrook, Staley, Deshaun Jackson. are three that I had a tough time not putting on my list. I'll be honest with you, like really tough time on the offensive side.
You're absolutely right, man. I mean, especially I played with Deuce. I saw Deuce do incredible things while I was with the Eagles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Another Barrett, there was like Westbrook, there was nothing the guy couldn't do. He could catch a pass, he could run it, he could block. He was smart, tough. I mean, everything. He had everything you wanted in a football player. So yeah, if it was 10, it'd be a little bit easier. 5 makes it tough. You're gonna leave some guys off, man, that were phenomenal. So that's mine. How about you, Derek?
Offensively, I had my list down since this morning. That was easy. Number 5 for me was D-Jack. D-Jack currently still sits at number 3 all time in receiving yards when you consider he did 2 separate stints with this organization. In his heyday, D-Jack was one of the most feared wide receivers in the game. His route running tree was limited, but you couldn't contain him. Dude, they would try. If a quarterback had time to stand back in the pocket and pat the ball and he was going deep, it was over. It was basically over. He was one of the best at tracking the ball because of his baseball experience in high school and college. That dude could track a ball.
He played in college too?
Yeah. I think he played in college also. That dude could track a ball like you wouldn't believe, man, in terms of over either shoulder. And when it got to him, he didn't drop many. I don't remember many deep balls D-Jack dropped. Plus, you know, he's the only player ever to make a Pro Bowl for 2 different positions. You know, so I hated to do it, but D-Jack was my number 5. My number 4 was John Runyon. John Runyon was one of the nastiest offensive linemen in the history of the game. Dudes talked about John Runyon, about how dirty he was. And you know, there was a guy back in the 70s named Conrad Dobler who played for the St. Louis Cardinals. And he talked about how the psychological advantage he would have when he stepped to the line of scrimmage, because the guys lining up opposite him were worried about what kind of dirty crap is he going to do to me today. So it would take them a little bit off their game and giving them the psychological edge. John Runyon used to take pride in the fact that he was voted one of the dirtiest players ever to play in the game. And he used that to his advantage. Plus, he was rock solid at the tackle position. Yeah. You know, at that time, there was nobody at the tackle position better than the John Runyon. My number 3 is LaShawn McCoy, because McCoy to this day is still the all-time leading rusher. LaShawn McCoy was an electric player, you know.
Incredible.
He had some durability issues at times in his career, but the fact that, you know, he wasn't here that long and he's still number 3 all-time rushing for this franchise says a lot about what he could do when he was healthy. My number 2 was Jason Peters. Jason Peters is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. When you look at this guy, he went from playing a tight end
Arkansas.
That's how he was
Arkansas.
Drafted.
A tight end, and became one of the best tackles to ever play the game in the history of pro football. He's the first ballot Hall of Famer, rock solid. Obviously, he fell off a little bit in the latter stages of his career, had durability issues, you know. But number 1, I'm with you guys all the way. You know, a lot of people want to hear it, but Donovan McNabb, you still look at the stats across the board. He is the best quarterback in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of yards, touchdowns, you name it. He's the number 1 on their list. So you can't put anybody else. I wanted to put Westbrook there. I couldn't put T.O. because T.O.'s tenure here was short. When T.O. was here, he was electric, no question about it. And then all of a sudden, that second season, T.O. lost his mind, messed up the whole team, caused all kind of division on this team, and Andy Reid got rid of him real quick. So I couldn't put T.O. I thought about Jeremy Maclin, but Jeremy Maclin was always injured, you know, when he was here. He had some great games, but he didn't have enough consistent games. So those are some of the players I couldn't put on the list, but that's my top 5.
That's good. Look, and the beauty of this is you could always debate it, and you can always make a case for a guy who one of us left out or whatever. I mean,
like Zach Ertz,
right? Zach Ertz numbers are amazing.
What about Lane Johnson?
Lane Johnson, yeah.
Lane Johnson,
Brandon Brooks.
Brandon Brooks. I mean, Brandon Brooks was here 4 seasons, but he was one of the best right guards in the game.
It's a good call.
Yeah, he was the best. He was the best 1 year and top 2 for 3 years.
Yeah, and I didn't want to just make this skill players. You know, I mean,
right.
We're talking about overall great players, and offensive linemen have to be put into that equation, man. And the Eagles have had so many roots. Yeah. I mean, Peters, Kelsey, Runyon, Thomas. Oh my God, man. And Lane. Yeah, incredible. The amount that they've had.
Man,
oh, unbelievable. All right, I'll start defense if you guys don't mind. And again, there's going to be a couple left out here. You're going to say, like, why isn't this guy on the list? I only had 5. So anyway, all right. Number 5, I went Trotter. I went Jeremiah Trotter for his impact that he had as a linebacker here.
Yep.
And I feel like we're still trying to replace, Jeremiah Trotter.
Right.
We've been talking about them getting a linebacker forever in this town that had that kind of impact. And I know it was 2 stints and he wasn't, quite the same guy when he came back the second time, whatever. But I thought he had a pretty good run. Anyway, I go Trotter 5. I go Malcolm Jenkins 4. Malcolm Jenkins never missed games. Okay. Never missed snaps, played special teams, was a part of a Super Bowl, was a leader on this team. We could go on and on and on about the impact that this guy had and was a phenomenal safety in a lot of ways. So I put Malcolm at number 4. I put Fletcher Cox at number 3. I know he's a little diminished now, but the prime Fletcher years are pretty damn impressive, man. And again, a guy who was part of a Super Bowl. So I put him as number 3. I put Brandon Graham as number 2. And
wow.
I know.
Yeah.
I know that feels high. I get it.
Whoa.
I understand. But I just think between the ability to defend the run, which we don't give him any credit for, and the pass, he's a versatile 2-down defensive end who's not just a specialist and has, the longevity thing for me is amazing. I know he missed last year, but he's been around for a very long time. I mean, he's gone through Andy Reid, Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, and now Nick Sirianni. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And then the obvious one, number 1's obvious. It's Brian Dawkins. I don't know what else there is to even say. Just a guy who became a prototype for how safeties are used now with what Jim Johnson, did with him, and did everything well. Could cover, could hit, was a great blitzer, was a really good special teams player. We tend to forget about that too.
That's right.
And leadership is probably second to none for what Brian Dawkins brought to the table. So, there's a lot of guys that I left out. I get it, but they're my 5 that I'm going with. Whoever wants to grab it next. Derek, you want to take next? Let Barrett go last.
Yeah, I'll go next. My number 5 is Trent Cole. Trent Cole, his durability is second to none. I think he missed like 3 games his entire tenure in Philadelphia. And I always asked him, I said, how are you able to stay so healthy? And his theory made sense. He says, when you saw people in piles and in scrums, he said that you had to keep the feet moving. Always keep your feet moving and always keep your head on a swivel. And he said, I always kept my feet moving. He says a lot of time when players got injured was when people were fighting for fumble balls, or when it was scrum pile, when you're trying to stop a runner, and then all of a sudden somebody comes in and tries to put the finishing hit on them. And all of a sudden, that's how you get hurt with the knees and ankles. He said, I always kept my legs moving and always kept my body on a swivel. And that's how he was able to avoid a lot of injuries.
I think he's underrated in general.
I do too.
As an Eagle player, but go ahead.
And he's number 2 in sacks and number 3 all time on his Eagles list in terms of multiple game sacks.
Yep.
I think you're right. He's one of the most underrated defenders the Eagles ever had. My number 4 is Malcolm Jenkins. I call it a Swiss Army knife. Malcolm Jenkins came down in the box. Malcolm Jenkins could step back, cover the tight end, cover running back coming out. Malcolm Jenkins was a teacher. If you think about the last few years here, he was in Philadelphia, and when he had all these young guys playing on the back end of the defense, Malcolm Jenkins was basically their secondary coach. And I remember the one season when he said, I told these guys, he said, okay, that's it. I'm not babysitting you anymore. Now you figure it out. And because of that, they didn't have Malcolm really to lean on there to figure it out. They got better. They were still not top tier, but they got better as they went along. Once he turned them loose, I guess, Mama Bird kicked the baby birds out of the nest. So he's my number 4. My number 3, Fletcher Cox, for what you said. Unfortunately for Fletcher, he was always compared to Aaron Donald, but they were 2 different type players. Aaron Donald built his credibility with his ability to garner double-digit sacks. Fletcher Cox, during his tenure in Philadelphia, was asked to control the line of scrimmage and free up people around him to finish off plays. So his sack numbers have never been close to what an Aaron Donald was. But in terms of brute strength, being able to shed double-team blocks, push double-team blocks back into a quarterback, I don't know if there was a stronger defensive lineman since Reggie White than Fletcher Cox. Okay? My number 2 would be Trotter. We have not had a middle linebacker in the time I've been here that comes close to Trotter. There's a reason why he was called the Axe Man. He's a downhill player all the time, a disruptive factor, and he was a thumper. If he got his hands on you, you weren't going where. If he caught you and you didn't see him, you were going to feel it. You would be headed to the ice bath the next day. Trotter was one of the tough, for a dude that was only like 6'2", but he was about 245. Trotter could move sideline to sideline. He'd blow you up. He was not afraid to stick his nose in there and take on a guard or a tackle in any given moment. And Trotter set the tone for a lot of that defense. My number one gets a lot of credit for being a tone setter on defense, Brian Dawkins. Brian Dawkins, not just because of what he became, but what he had to go through to get to where he was as a professional athlete. Brian Dawkins overcame the dark side of life where a lot of people don't make it. He battled depression early on in his career. He had suicide tendencies. He was a young father, a young husband, and Brian Dawkins' struggle off the field was greater than any struggle he went through on the football field. And he overcame that. He still battles depression today, but he overcame that and made himself not just a perennial Pro Bowl player and one of the most respected players to ever play that position, but a Hall of Fame player as well. So Brian Dawkins, hands down, my number one.
Okay, interesting. Interesting list. How about you, Barrett?
Yeah.
Where are you going? It started with 5.
Well, 5, I'm gonna go. It was tough, man, because some great players, but I'm gonna go Fletcher Cox as my number 5 guy.
Okay.
For everything you guys have said, he's been the most dominant defensive lineman I've seen since
Reggie White.
Yeah, since I was here. You know what I'm saying? Since I've been a part of Philadelphia Eagles football since '95, he's been the most dominant. I even played with some guys that were pretty good, So, Andy Harmon, guys like that,
William Fuller.
William
guys,
Fuller. Yeah. So he's been the most dominant I've seen. Next, I'm gonna go Malcolm. Malcolm was a leadership. He's a big reason why that whole team stuck together and made it to the Super Bowl. He was the glue. He was the cog that made that whole machine run. My third guy is somebody that doesn't get a lot of accolades, but he's by far one of the best players I've seen here, and that's Troy. Troy Vincent at cornerback and at safety. He taught all those young guys how to play the game.
That's a good one. Troy's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, he taught B-Dog the game.
That's right.
He taught
Bobby Taylor. Bobby Taylor talked about it when we had him on. Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly. So he's more influential than anybody, that I know, especially during that time. Then my number 2 guy is Trotter. The Axeman. I'm playing against him, practicing with him.
Yeah.
He was by far one of the most dominant defensive linebackers I've played against and played with. I played some great linebackers too. I'm talking about guys that I played with the Steelers, like James Ferrier and guys like that. You know what I'm saying? Harris. I played with Silverback. You know what I'm saying? He's one of the best, most dominant.
James Harrison.
Players I've ever been around. But Trot was one of those guys you had a game plan for. Mm-hmm. And then number 1, of course, it's going to be B-Dog. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, that's my list. And then it was hard for me how not to put Bobby up there and Slay up there. Both of those guys are great players.
I agree. I thought about Lido for a minute.
Sheldon Brown.
Sheldon. Troy's a great one. I should have, Javon Curse. It was just so short-lived, with Javon.
And there's one we forgot. I think he was the last of the shutdown corners that the Eagles had, Asante Samuel.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, Asante Samuel. You're right.
He doesn't get enough love either.
No, he doesn't. No.
Yeah.
But he was a shutdown corner.
Yeah, and he was an interception machine.
Yes.
He had a lot of interceptions in his career.
Don't forget about Bradley Stewart.
What?
Yeah, I'm just playing.
Stuart Bradley.
What?
Stuart Bradley, whatever his name is. I just say that because we played in a preseason game, man. And I'm in the game. I'm running with the ones. I knew I was going to start, but I was just running with the ones, you know what I'm saying? And I dunked him on his head, put him on his back, drove him down. I did like 3 plays in a row. And he's getting off the ground. He turned around and looked at me and said, you're not even making the team. Who are you? I said, You're not either. This is your 3rd time being on the ground. You're not either.
Oh, man.
But he actually said that to me. I said, like, who are you?
Yeah, who are you, man? That's unbelievable.
Right.
We're getting a lot of good nominations for special teams. I mean, look, if we do special teams, David Akers, it's without question the greatest kicker the Eagles have ever had.
Number 1.
I mean, and that's
Darren
like almost
Sproles.
Absolutely. I would put Westbrook and Deshaun both in those categories.
Yeah.
Punt return men. Both really good.
Ike Reese. 100%. Yes.
B. Mitch would get a touch, even though it was not here forever.
Exactly.
Might throw him in there. I'm trying to think of other. That's there's not a. How about punter?
Yeah. Oh,
punter with Sean.
What?
Donnie Johnson. Donnie Jones.
Donnie Jones.
Yeah.
Donnie Longball.
What wasn't he from Australia? Where was it? Who was it? Did we have a punter from Australia?
Savroka.
He was good in terms of ball placement. In terms of accuracy,
he had no touch though, Gunner. He was
but a couple of years he led the league in like punts per average or something like that.
I guess.
And punts down inside the 20.
They've had a lot. Actually, Sippos is Australian. Cam Johnston was Australian. I don't know. I still can't figure out why Cam Johnston was.
I don't
know.
And they raised him too. You know, he was on the practice squad for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
I don't get that even a little bit.
Going back to the defense for just a second, two linebackers that I left off the list that were rock solid for this team: Carlos Emmons and D'Amico Ryans.
Very good.
D'Amico, they were both solid players. 100%. Carlos didn't make a lot of. He didn't get a lot of notoriety for quarterback sacks. But Carlos Emmons didn't make many mistakes.
No, great coverage guy too.
Great coverage, great tackle. D'Amico Ryans was kind of like a trotter. Yeah, D'Amico was a thumper. Smaller linebacker, big body, but he was a thumper, man. He was a tone setter for games.
Coaching his butt off too.
Yeah, look at him now. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in the game.
Absolutely. Oh, he'll be a head coach soon. He's a fast track guy.
Well, we hope because we keep saying that guy in Kansas City should have been a head coach a long time ago.
No, you're right. Should be a head coach. Let me rephrase that. No, that's good. I always think it's fun to do those kind of memory lane stuffs, those kind of lists, man. Because what it does is you start to really think about these guys and everything they did when they were here too. It's fun.
I remember my guy Gary Anderson. He was South African. I thought you.
Oh yeah.
I thought you guys talking about him first, but Gary.
I remember him. I
covered him in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's a shame. All I remember is he missed the big kick for Minnesota when Randall went to
he did. Yeah, that's the one. Matter of fact, he had missed a kick all year.
I know. He was on fire.
Kick.
I know.
Yes.
Jake Elliott. Jeremiah brings up a good point. Jake Elliott should get a little love. He should. He should get a little love. He needs to do it a few more years, but he had a great year last year. You talk about a guy who really had
turned it up, didn't he?
Big time, because he was very inconsistent prior to that. But he had a good year last year. All right, so we're going to step aside here. We'll come back. We'll keep the Eagles talk going, and we're going to pose the question. And again, great job by the comment section. Feel free to chime in on this one as well. Which new Eagle can work any way, trade, free agent, draft, whatever, will have the biggest impact this season for the Birds? And we'll do that when we get back. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. He is Barrett Brooks. He is Derek Gunn. I am Rob Ellis. All right, let me tell you about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because you want to make sure you get your finances straight, man. This is not something you mess around with. It's your future, bottom line. And I can tell you from personal experience that I trust my finances with Jim Murray and the Principal Financial Group, whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review. You may have a small business and you need to set up employee benefits. It's another resource that Jim can help you with. And it's also confusing now with what's going on with the stock market, I'm sure. And you probably have a lot of questions. He's there as a sounding board. He's there as a resource to answer any questions that you may have. I know I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollover with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. Trust me. 610-996-4751. That's how you can reach out to him. 610-996-4751. Drop him an email. Murray, MURRAY.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray.Jim@principal.com.